Hey everyone, welcome to Studio Jake. Today we have a very special guest. She's one of my all-star guests that frequents or that has frequented more than once. Rosemary Dewar. She is a writer for Athens Now, the Rouser, and Red Alert Politics. Where normally she covers important issues like the state of Israel, terrorism, President Trump. But today she's joined me to have a little bit more lighthearted conversation to talk about as we go into Oscar season. We're leaving summer 2017. We're going to talk about some movies that really surprised us this past summer and even back a little bit into the spring. So, Rosemary, welcome back to Studio Jake.
Thank you, Jacob.
All right, so right off the bat, I'm going to mention the elephant in the room, which is Wonder Woman. That movie surprised me. I didn't know, I hadn't seen any Patty Jenkins movie, and now I'm kind of mad that they fired her off Thor: Dark World. That movie would have been so much better with her at the helm, because Wonder Woman really surprised me. I thought it was amazing. It got the DC film franchise back on track. I was a little disappointed in, a spoiler alert, I was a little disappointed in who they ended up getting to play Ares. I was expecting, they got kind of, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but they got kind of just a generic British actor instead of someone who's really well known, like a Ralph Fiennes or Daniel Craig. They just kind of went with someone who mainly does like more stand-in roles. But outside of that, Gal Gadot, it's not Gadot, it's Gal Gadot. She corrected it on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. She was fantastic as Wonder Woman, and Chris Pine really shined as Steve Trevor. What did you think? Did you get to see it?
I did get to see it. We did do a review on it earlier, a few months back, and it was one of the most, like you said, it was one of the better grounded DC flicks. And it, like I had said before, she did surprise me as an actress. She is flinty for us kind of seeing her as a B-list type of actress on some of the other not as well-known movies. But she did a fantastic job, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she does next.
Yeah, me too. And like you said, it wasn't like Avengers, because to me, as far as superhero movies go, The Dark Knight and the first Avengers movies, those two are the peak when it comes to the comic book genre. And while I don't think Wonder Woman quite reached that precipice, it just as a DC, in the DC franchise, I think it was great. Like I said, I think if they had rubbed the edges around a little bit, it really could have been an even greater film than it was. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I actually talked with Andrew Clavin, and he actually told me that he thought it was a fun movie, but not a good movie. I think he just doesn't like the comic book genre itself.
For someone who plays video games, that's kind of surprising.
Yeah, I know, exactly. All right. So, what about you? What's a film that really shocked you, or that you just thought was good coming into or leaving the summer?
Yes, so one of the animated films that came out for kids called Boss Baby kind of surprised me. It's very conservative undertone. It's very nuclear family positive. It's pro-life positive, and it does value humans over animals. The storyline actually it gives you the narrative perspective of the older brother who finds out that he's going to become an older brother, and he sees the entire family just kind of orbit the baby, the brand new baby. And the baby is actually brought into the family to keep the nemesis from replacing every baby with a puppy that doesn't grow up.
Oh, wow.
And it's something that's kind of not widely broadcast. It's not something that's overt, but it's a very family positive, traditional family positive narrative, and that kind of surprised me.
Well, that's really cool, because I have to admit, I saw the previews, and I was like, I am not seeing this movie. And I love animated films, and I didn't see it, so that's really neat. Now I'll have to go rent it at Redbox. Who would you say, because I know Alec Baldwin was in it. And a lot of people kind of joked, "Oh, it's a perfect role for Alec Baldwin because he's playing a big baby."
Right, the guy that never grows up. And what's even funnier is Jimmy Kimmel plays the father.
Oh wow!
And Lisa Kudrow plays the mother, and I love her and everything. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's a really good actress.
So it's like the dialogue is funny, the animation is really good, and the psychological parts that are being played are really well done. It's not, like I said, it's not an overtly conservative narrative, but it's so blatant from someone who watches it. It's like this is not the usual narrative that comes out of Hollywood, especially for kids movies.
That's really neat. And speaking of animated films, Bruce Timm, who heads up Warner Brothers Animation, it's kind of funny because Marvel is a disaster right now with their animated features, but Warner Brothers, you know, with the exception of Wonder Woman, their animated features are killing. But then they come out with Batman and Harley Quinn, which it came out on around the anniversary for the epic 90s and early 2000s series, Batman the Animated Series. Every person I know has at least seen one episode, and it was meant to be a nostalgia throwback. Mm-hmm. It's not connected in any way, but it's the same art form, and of course Kevin Conroy and Lauren Lester return as Batman and Nightwing, respectively. But they didn't get the original Harley Quinn. They got I can't think of her name, but she plays she's on The Big Bang Theory. Anyway, she plays Howard's wife. I can't Bernadette, but I can't think of the actress's name. Anyway, she was a disaster as Harley Quinn, and it was so funny because normally my wife tolerates my cartoon obsession, but this time she looks at me and she goes, "Jacob, I would rather clean the kitchen than watch this movie." That's how bad. That's how terrible it was. my best friend described it as, you go from banging your head against the wall to going, "Oh wow, I get that reference," and that's literally what it was. You go, and they go, "Oh cool, oh cool." That was kind of my reactions. Perchance, did you get a chance to rent it on Redbox by any stretch?
I did not, but it sounds like something that's full of Easter eggs everywhere. So definitely something I'm going to have to get in the future. But yeah, it's like that's definitely something I'm going to have to grab and watch.
Oh yeah, it definitely Easter eggs. And it did have some great lines of dialogue. For those familiar with Batman the Animated Series, in the last season when Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing, he has a mullet, and so in this one he doesn't. Now he just has the modern Nightwing haircut, but they make a couple of references to his mullet, and those kind of made me chuckle a little bit, you know, because when you're a kid you don't care that Nightwing has a mullet. That doesn't really concern you, but as an adult you're like, "Oh yeah, he did have a mullet, I forgot about that."
So, anyway, up front, party in the back. It's like, why?
Exactly. If you're gonna grow out, if you're a guy and you're not gonna at least make it look cool, you know, like Mike Vogel or something, you know, don't bother. Yeah. You know. So, all right, moving along. What's another one that you enjoyed or was surprised by?
Another one that I watched was the latest Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and it again has even like another covert narrative that is quite Judeo-Christian.
Oh wow!
And also very father-centric. You have Henry Turner, who's separated from his father because of the curse of Davy Jones, in order to bring sailors who have lost their lives into the underworld, and he comes across another woman who's Mrs. Smith, who was abandoned by her father, and both of them are, one's trying to free his father, and the other one's trying to figure out who her father is. And the female character is given a book by her father giving a book, very interesting, and she has to follow the night sky, the stars, in order to find what they need to find is Neptune's scepter.
Okay.
In order to break the curse that's keeping them away from their fathers that they don't know or are estranged from. So it's like they follow the stars in order to find the scepter. And once they find the scepter, they actually find out that they have to break it. The scepter itself is something that holds all curses, period. All curses of the sea are contained within it. So they have to break the curse in order for their fathers to be freed, in order for them to know who their father is, and to join themselves together again. And spoiler alert, we end up finding that Miss Smith's father is actually Barbossa.
Oh, wow.
And he ends up sacrificing himself to save her. That, I mean, it's like, I don't know how much more blatantly psychologically Judeo-Christian you can get than that. But again, it's like you have a narrative that is very family-centric, that is reconciling that relationship, and it's beautiful. And I know it's like it unfortunately did not get that well of ratings. It didn't get an extremely big box office, but again, it's a very family-friendly, family-positive movie.
That's really neat. I have to admit, I didn't get that from the first Pirates of the Caribbean. Well, they were especially I would say the first one was the best, obviously.
Yes.
But you can definitely kind of see that they were going along, and I think that has to do with the producer, Jerry Bruckheimer. I know that he tends to be a little bit more, how should I say this? I think he's more of an old classic liberal, and so he still respects like some of the Judeo-Christian values and the idea of family. So I could kind of see how that worked its way into the story.
And I don't think he directed this one. So
no, I don't think he did either.
Yeah, so it's like it was surprising. I was quite shocked by how it's like, I mean, you see other Disney movies where either the father is belligerent or absent, and this is the opposite of that. So it was cool.
Well, that's really neat. That's one I'll definitely have to check out, because I forget. I work with a lot of people who are in the film industry, and so I have to remember what they like in a movie might be different than just someone who just goes to the movies. Because like I came and they're like, oh, it was so terrible. The first one was awesome, and this one was so terrible. Would you say it was terrible, or did you enjoy it?
I mean, it's a little slow. Some of the dialogue is not as punchy as it was in the first two films of the franchise, but overall, it's something you can sit down and enjoy.
Oh, that's cool. All right, so I'm gonna switch gears, and we're gonna go into horror. That's a big jump. Animated to adventure, and we're gonna go into horror. So Netflix premiered their adaptation of Death Note, which is based on a Japanese manga and anime. And again, you have all the accusations of whitewashing. Oh my gosh, it's a freaking cartoon. Okay, so anyway, I had to get that off my chest. So there'll probably be spoilers, and I did review the movie on my blog, so this is kind of a bonus thing for everyone. But okay, so basically here were my thoughts on. I thought that there were a couple of unnecessary gore scenes. Like I know sometimes whenever you see a horror movie, you're kind of expecting gore, but there was at least two scenes, and I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of unnecessary. Like it didn't do anything to enhance the story, and it wasn't even necessarily terrifying. You were just kind of like, oh, ooh, okay, got it. Yeah, this is a horror movie. But I will say, William Dafoe plays Ryuk, who is the demon that gives the main character, the Death Note, where he can basically this demon gives this kid this Death Note, and he can write down people's names and they die, and he can also determine how they die over a 2-day period. So this kid, he becomes a vigilante known as, oh man, my best friend is going to kill me. It's his favorite anime. All right, I can't remember. Kira, there it is. And so he starts wiping out these bad guys, and then a secret agent named L comes in, and Agent L is trying to catch Light. And so it's kind of like, basically it does something that the anime doesn't, from my understanding. I've only seen a few episodes of the anime, but basically the anime is kind of like a cat and mouse. L is trying to catch Light, and Light is constantly dodging being caught. But then the movie, it was more about, oh, is Light really doing the right thing? Is he really helping society? You know, it was more about, you know, and also sometimes I felt like they didn't know what their own message was. Mm-hmm. So is it, oh, the ends justify the mean? Well, maybe, but not really. And so it to me, they couldn't settle on, was Light doing the right thing or not? Mm-hmm. And where the anime, right off the bat, you're like, oh, wow, Light has a god complex. Yeah. So, but anyway, are you into American remakes of Japanese anime by any chance?
I used to be more so in high school, and then I need to like catch up on it. And it's like I've unfortunately been out of pocket for a lot of it. But yeah, I did read a lot of articles accusing of the whitewashing stuff. And then you had talked again in the past about Ghost in the Shell, and it having a similar narrative that just like it's an android, like there's no I'm an android. So yeah, that was so very interesting to kind of see that juxtaposition and them making a big deal out of nothing.
Yeah, and again, it's an animated movie. So, and in Death Note's case, because the animated series was so iconic, and it's actually one of the shorter, and like Dragon Ball Z is still going. After a hiatus, Dragon Ball Z is still going. What is it? One Piece. I think they're up to something over 500 episodes. But Death Note, I think, is only something like 37 episodes. And what in my humble opinion, in this unique case, I would have made it where Ryuk, I would have made it a sequel to the anime. But that's just my opinion. I think a direct adaptation probably was too hard, especially with the theme. So if they wanted to go with a new theme, I think that what they should have done is had the American boy, it's just Ryuk is just giving him the Death Note after Light from the anime dies. But that's just my opinion. One thing I did appreciate about it was sometimes, and you can probably attest to this, Japanese tend to make the demonic look cool.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that before?
Well, it's like they're it's like it's weird. They're not just cool, but they're also slightly romanticized.
Right.
So it's like they're very tempting. It's like the main characters or antagonists and protagonists are very engrossed with like the experience of being around it. But
right, exactly. And Ryuk, but in the American remake, now again, I've only seen a couple episodes of the Death Note anime, so I can't really compare. But I will say for the American version, Ryuk is not your friend. He's very evil. He's very sinister. Willem Dafoe did a fantastic job voicing him. And I can't remember the actor's name that they got to actually do the motion for Ryuk, but he was great as kind of like this creepy presence that you feel. And definitely, like, it was more like you shake hands with the devil, you get burned. Like, that was, so I did appreciate that about it, as opposed to making it, oh, look, like in Black Butler, like he's got a freaking pentagram tattooed on his hand and he's a vampire. So, I'm kind of glad that the American remake kind of moved away from that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so moving right along, what's another film that you enjoyed?
I enjoyed it, but it was a little bit of a letdown compared to what it was before. But I watched the newest Triple X with Vin Diesel. And spoiler alert, they bring back Ice Cube from 2005, but it's a little over with its feminism, just a little bit, well, a little more than a little bit, and eventually the true antagonist eats it at the end. Worth it. And then, but it's very diverse. There's lots of different types of characters and different ethnicities represented throughout the film. And but it's like the action is good, the dialogue is it was a little bit of a letdown. The action's good. Some of the fight scenes are a little contrived and long, but I mean it's the classic Vin Diesel trying to be James Bond type thing, doing these outrageous types of stunts that no human could actually do and survive. But that's what Xander Cage is for. So it's a cool way for my generation to kind of look at a brand new James Bond. And since the last Fast and Furious, this might be something that he'll turn back into a franchise and try and grow again and have kind of like that gang, clan feel, family, community thing that his characters usually don't have. So it'll be interesting to see what he turns it into. But it's a little campy, little contrived, but it's Vin Diesel. What do you expect?
And on that note, on Fate of the Furious, they are really, ever since 7, that family narrative has really been pushed. And you definitely saw, I think also probably because of Paul Walker's death, you definitely saw it in Fate of the Furious, and which of course 7 was the one that Paul Walker, he died while they were making. But they've pushed it, I think since that incident, they've really pushed it. Oh, we're not a gang of thieves anymore. We're a family. And hey, look, we're the A-Team now. You know, way cooler than the A-Team. So I can kind of see where, because they, according to Vin Diesel, they're only going to do 2 more Fast and the Furious movies. So I can kind of see what you're saying about wanting to make XXX a franchise. Now, as far as Ice Cube, it's been so long since I've seen the first and the second. I actually don't think I ever saw the second one. I think I just saw the first one. Yeah. What did they? Because Ice Cube kind of tried to take over the franchise, did they kind of play off that competition a little bit?
Instead of turning it into a competition, they turned it into a community. So it's more like Vin Diesel says, there's always backup, call this, and XXX is always there for each other. So he's kind of like a brother of the XXX program. And supposedly now there's more, similar to like Jason Bourne, they're not the only one. Like Jason Bourne himself is not the only one. There's supposedly
until he is.
Yeah. So now there's the idea that there's multiple XXX agents, and we'll definitely see them continuing to bring in brand new characters, and see how he decides to turn that into a franchise. We'll see.
I noticed he's kind of like Sylvester Stallone. Stallone always, whenever he's in a franchise, he has to take it over. It's not just, like it, which Rocky, I understand. He wrote Rocky, but like, even with it in Creed, which was a fantastic movie, like you feel the Stallone presence.
Yeah, and Vin Diesel's the same way. It's like he's become a producer on the film, and so I mean, even though he's not listed as a writer, you can guarantee that he collaborated when it came to the writing. So I mean, similar to what Mark Wahlberg does with his films, he usually decides to become a producer and gets his hands into the film. So we'll see Vin Diesel continue to do that, and but yeah, get ready for a brand new franchise of Xander Cage. I just feel it coming.
All right, so this one's going to shock, and again, I think I wrote a review on this on my blog, and I actually covered this film a little bit, but they did a film called The Case for Christ. Now, it's not based on the book. The book is completely non-fiction, but and it's more it's about Lee Strobel. Now he's an apologetics expert. He used to be Christian apologetics, I should say. He used to be a hardcore atheist, and this film shows him from becoming an atheist to his journey to becoming the Lee Strobel that we know today, who's now a professor of Christian apologetics. I can't remember what theological seminary he's at off the top of my head, but I was surprised because they called it The Case for Christ, which is the most obvious name you could give a Christian film. And so I actually went to the movie theater with very low expectations. I was not expecting a good Christian film like Priceless or well, I like God's Not Dead. I know other people don't, but I went in with very low expectations. Although I will say they actually got a real director, and Mike Vogel, obviously, he's a very well-known actor, so, to play Lee Strobel. So I went to the movie theater. Guess who was the youngest person there? So yeah, it was so funny. I got there first, and so I sat like in the perfect seat right in the middle of the theater, and then these church ladies all come in, and they all, of course, they want to sit on my row because it's the best row. And so I was like, so I scooted over and let them all get in the middle so they could sit together. But yeah, I'm not saying that to toot my horn, but just to give you an idea about the about how that my expectations going into this film. So I actually was really surprised. It's a really good film, and I won't say it's great. Like, it's not like Godfather, but it's definitely a good film. And even critics, surprisingly, secular critics were actually giving it some praise because it doesn't have like the cheesy. Even the bad guys are perfect, which there's not really a bad guy in this. It's more about a self-discovery journey for Lee Strobel, but it shows like the when his wife becomes a Christian, it shows how him being a hardcore atheist and then his wife becoming a Christian, and how that actually, you know, in most Christian films, oh, everything's perfect. Now the wife makes the house all shiny and sparkly, and even though the husband's an atheist, he still appreciates how amazing she is. It wasn't like that at all. Like, it shows how Lee Strobel and his wife actually clashed on faith, and they had really strong arguments that were even at times hard to watch. My only complaint about the film, because it showed him going to interview some of these experts on the Gospels, was that at times it felt like it was more like a documentary than a movie. So it would go in, you would go to a really dramatic scene, and it would feel like a movie, and then it would go back like, oh, now I'm watching a documentary. That's my only complaint about it. But otherwise, I thought it really surprised me. It was a good movie.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Are you familiar with? Well, now I'm going to forget his name. Brian Bird. He's the guy who produced it.
I'm not.
He actually was a mainstream movie producer, but he felt like God called him to make Christian films, and so now he's that. So The Case for Christ, he's done a couple other smaller, lower budget films, but The Case for Christ was actually like his first movie that went a little mainstream in that regard. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Now before we started recording, you told me that you were going to talk about Baby Driver. Now, yes. I'm actually mad at myself because I wanted to see this movie, but I just never got around to it, which means it's probably going to win Best Picture. But I actually did hear it's a contender for Best Picture. So tell us a little bit about Baby Driver.
So Baby Driver is a story about a kid that ends up losing his parents to a car accident. You end up seeing a lot of flashbacks about the history of what happened, and because of that car accident, he actually gets tinnitus in his ears. And in order to drown that out, he listens to music the entire movie. And the cool part about what the director wanted to do is that he wanted the music itself to actually tell part of the story, which is kind of cool. The stunts for it are absolutely fantastic. Some of those stunts are better than XXX when it comes to driving. They just are. Wow. They are like, oh my gosh, like some of them are so hairpin and so close. You're like, I even cringed. I'm like, I couldn't imagine being in that car doing some of that stuff. But so towards the end, the antagonists bite it like they should. It has a good ending, good wins, and one of the interesting things is that because he did take part in illegal activity, he ends up having to go to jail. And spoiler alert. So he does end up having to go to jail, not for that long. He still ends up with the girl. It works. But the guy who basically trafficked his services as a child also eats it, even though he kind of helps him out because he sees that he's in a pinch and he owes him a lot. And but it's like he still decided to take part in illegal activity up until adulthood, and you do see him actually have to make comeuppance for bad decisions when he could have walked away anytime he wanted to. But yeah, the stunts are absolutely fantastic. There's not a lot of dialogue, and there's not a lot of character development because they really don't want you getting attached to people that deserve to die.
Right.
And Kevin Spacey is one of those characters. Well, he's one of those actors that no one really knows enough about. Period. So whatever in the world he decides to play, he kind of always surprises you. So for him to kind of boss Baby around and eventually helping him out towards the end is a little bit of a plot twist. So, but yeah, it's like the stunts are fantastic. And it's like, and in the end, good wins, which is really cool.
That's really neat. Like I said, everyone was telling me, you got to go see Baby Driver. You got to go see Baby Driver. And so I was like, one day I was like, hey, I wonder if it's still playing. Wasn't. I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
But I do want to see. I do want to see that because I hear that it's not your typical Oscar bait. Like, it's really good. Edgar Wright is the director, I believe, and he's actually a pretty good director. I've seen some of his other films.
Yeah. And it's like, and his music choice is really, really good. You get a little bit of, you get some good classics from the 70s. You get some really cool remixes of some of the more current stuff. But yeah, he did a really good job on actually letting some of the music tell part of the story. It's kind of just in the background. Sometimes it's ambient, sometimes it's very loud, but it does push the story forward, which is really well done, actually.
That's really cool. I like one thing. I loved the trailers for it too, which is really. It's so funny because I recently did another movie trailer reaction marathon, and one of the guys commented and said, hey, I had to laugh because you're just judging the whole movie by the trailer, and I used to do that, and I had to reply, well, you're right, because I had some really negative reactions. I watched the trailer to a movie called The Square, which is probably looks like the most boring movie ever made, but just the title, The Square, you know. But I'm really glad to see that Baby Driver actually got made, because that was kind of the complaint that I have about modern Hollywood. It's just all the movies, even good ones like Hidden Figures and Loving. They're great films, but Oscar baits. It's, you know, they have to put in those little things, and which Moonlight was the ultimate Oscar bait movie. That's why it won Best Picture, of course. But all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like one of the things I kind of noticed out of all the movies that I decided to kind of bring up. It's like they all have their own little hint of toxic masculinity, which is apparently what Hollywood is actually missing. Is the like positive narrative for men, strong men, family men. I was like, I was like, now that I think about it, I'm kind of surprised that that's all in there. But yeah, it's a really interesting minor shift of content, and who knows? As long as the conservative narrative and Judeo-Christian archetypes continue, maybe we'll get good stuff.
Well, that's really cool. All right, so lightning rounds. Give me 3 films that you are excited that are coming out this year.
I am looking forward to seeing The Man Who Invented Christmas, because it is a kind of a look back of Charles Dickens and what some of his inspiration for The Christmas Carol was. That's something I'm looking forward to. I am looking forward to and dreading The Last Jedi. It's like if they mess it up, I'm going to be severely disappointed. And let's see what else is coming out. I'm trying to remember. Those are the only 2 I can think of right now that I really want to see.
All right, well, two's good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Thor Ragnarok. I'm kind of in the same boat with you as far as Star Wars: The Last Jedi. You know, and probably the last one. They're remaking Murder on the Orient Express, and Johnny Depp is going to be in it. And I think it's going to be good to see Johnny Depp doing another film like that, because I think that's more, you know, he's been doing ever since Pirates of the Caribbean. I hate to say it, but he kind of got typecast as Jack Sparrow, and so I heard a Black Mask kind of broke that, and so hopefully we'll get to see Johnny Depp. You know, I mean, because if you watch Danny Brasco and then you watch The Tourist, you're like, what happened to this guy?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So anyway, but Rosemary, where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter. I am there at RLYNND1. And you can find me at the 3 places with Athens Now, Rouser News, and Red Alert Politics.
And of course, you can find me right here on StudioJake and on Twitter at RealJacobAiry. And be sure to like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one.